It all started with a knock that I thought would change nothing. Just a visit, a polite meeting with someone's mother. That's all it was supposed to be. But the moment she closed the door behind me, I realized I had stepped into something far deeper than I could ever have imagined. The air in that room carried a heaviness I couldn't name yet. And her eyes, warm but clouded with something unsaid, told me this meeting wasn't ordinary. Little did I know, this visit would uncover truths buried for years, test my heart in ways I never expected, and led me to a moment that would change how I saw love, forgiveness, and family forever. Backhand index pointing right. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of forgiveness, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. It helps more than you know. My name is Sarah, and a year ago I was just an ordinary 27-year-old woman trying to rebuild her life after walking away from a painful breakup and a career that no longer made sense. I'd recently moved to a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of town where everything felt simpler. Small grocery stores, friendly neighbors, kids playing in the street. I worked part-time at a local daycare and spent my evenings painting to fill the silence of my tiny apartment. That's when I met Daniel, a kind, quiet man in his early 30s who had recently moved into the building across from mine. He had that soft sort of smile, the kind that carried both warmth and sorrow, as if he'd known too much pain and learned to live with it. We'd started as neighbors exchanging polite nods, then small talk, and before long, we'd spend evenings sitting on the steps outside, talking about everything from childhood dreams to the weight of expectations. He wasn't flashy, but he was honest, painfully so. There was a tenderness in him, especially when he spoke about his mother, who lived a few towns away. He often mentioned she wasn't well, that she'd been lonely since his father passed. So, when he asked me one Saturday morning if I'd come along to meet her, I said yes without hesitation. I thought it would just be a simple visit, a polite introduction. I didn't realize it would become a turning point in my life. The drive to his mother's house was calm. The countryside stretched out endlessly, dotted with golden fields and small cottages. Daniel seemed quiet that day, his hands gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. I tried to lighten the mood, but his smiles didn't quite reach his eyes. When we finally arrived, I noticed the house right away, old but cared for, surrounded by flowers that someone clearly loved tending to. The curtains were drawn and a soft tune played inside, the kind of song that reminded you of better times. When his mother, Mrs. Miller, opened the door, I was instantly struck by how familiar she felt. Not her face, but her presence. She looked like someone who had once loved deeply and lost everything. Her smile was gentle, but her eyes studied me too long, as if searching for something she recognized. Daniel excused himself to grab something from the car, leaving me standing there. That's when she quietly closed the door behind me, and for a moment, everything went still. She motioned for me to sit, her voice calm, but strangely distant. The living room smelled faintly of lavender and old wood, and the photographs on the walls told a story of love, family, and grief. There were pictures of a younger Daniel smiling with a woman who looked strikingly like me. Same hair, same eyes, same soft features. I felt my chest tighten. Before I could ask, Mrs. Miller said something that froze me in place. "You remind me so much of her." I didn't understand what she meant until she reached for a photo frame and handed it to me. In it was a young woman, beautiful, radiant, and unmistakably similar to me. "That's my son's late fiancée," she whispered. Her name was Lily. It felt like the room tilted for a moment. Daniel had never told me about her. Never mentioned he'd been engaged, let alone that she had died. Mrs. Miller's hands trembled slightly as she poured tea, her eyes glistening with memories too heavy to hold. She told me Lily had passed away 2 years ago in a car accident on the night before their wedding. The loss had shattered Daniel completely. He had withdrawn from everyone, even from her, and moved to the city to start over. When he said he met someone new, she said softly, "I was scared he was just chasing a shadow." I didn't know what to say. My heart ached, not with jealousy, but with a strange empathy. Suddenly, all of Daniel's quietness, all his unspoken sadness made sense. When he came back into the room, carrying a bouquet of his mother's favorite flowers, the atmosphere had shifted. He froze slightly when he saw me holding Lily's photo. And in that instant, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and fear. I didn't ask questions. I just smiled gently and placed the picture back where it belonged. That evening, I helped Mrs. Miller prepare dinner, and as we ate, we talked about everything but the past. Yet beneath the surface, everything felt fragile, like one wrong word could break something neither of us could fix. As night fell, rain began tapping softly on the windows, and Mrs. Miller excused herself to rest. Daniel and I sat in the dimly lit living room, the silence stretching between us. That's when he finally spoke. He told me about Lily, about how they'd grown up together, how she was his first love, his everything, and how losing her had turned his world upside down. "I didn't mean to hide it from you," he said quietly. "I just didn't know how to tell you without making you feel like you were standing in someone else's shadow." I remember staring at him, my heart heavy with understanding. I told him I wasn't angry, just sad that he'd carried that alone. That night, before we left, Mrs. Miller hugged me tightly at the door. She whispered something I didn't expect. "Maybe God brought you here for a reason." Weeks passed after that visit, but something in me had changed. I began seeing Daniel differently. Not as a man trying to move on, but as someone learning to breathe again after years of holding his breath. I started helping him reconnect with his mother, encouraging visits, phone calls, even small surprises. Slowly, the distance between them began to close. But life, as it always does, tested us. One afternoon, Daniel got a call from the hospital. His mother had collapsed. We rushed there, the world blurring outside the car window. She had suffered a mild stroke, but was stable. When we saw her in the hospital bed, frail yet smiling, something broke open inside me. She took my hand and whispered, "Take care of him, Sarah. He's been lost too long." Tears streamed down my face. I promised her I would. After that day, everything changed again. Daniel started opening up more, letting go of the guilt he had carried for so long. He began to laugh again, really laugh, and the shadows in his eyes started to fade. But the real turning point came one quiet evening when we visited his mother together. The air was cool and the house smelled like baked apples and cinnamon. As we sat around the table, she looked at us and said softly, "You know, when you first came here, Sarah, I closed that door because I was afraid you'd walk away once you saw our pain. But you didn't. You stayed. And because of that, I got my son back." Her words hit me harder than she knew. That night, as we drove home, Daniel reached for my hand and held it tightly. He didn't need to say anything. The silence between us was enough. It wasn't about replacing the past. It was about healing it. Months later, Mrs. Miller's health improved, and she began spending weekends with us. The laughter that once filled her home returned. Daniel and I built something slow, Something real, not to erase what came before, but to honor it. Love, I realized, doesn't always start with fireworks or perfect timing. Sometimes it begins quietly with understanding, forgiveness, and the courage to stay. And to this day, I still remember that moment, standing in that hallway, hearing the soft click of the door closing behind me, not as an ending, but as the beginning of everything that would follow. I thought I was just meeting his mom. I had no idea I was walking into the heart of a story that would remind me what love truly means. Not to forget, but to forgive, to rebuild, and to believe again. Red Heart, if this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Your support keeps stories like these alive and reaching more hearts. Speech balloon. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. What part of the story moved you the most? Leave a comment below and let's talk about it. Sometimes sharing our own stories helps others heal, too. And remember, sometimes the doors that close behind us aren't traps, they're beginnings disguised as endings.